And hello and welcome. Are you hearing that music?
Yeah,
Or is
are
it
we
just
on
me?
Mars?
Oh, is this like some new and exciting introduction? I don't know.
We're being beamed up by a spaceship.
I sort of like it. I don't know. I felt for a moment I was in RuPaul's Drag Race making my entrance. Um, well, hello and welcome everyone. Let's start all over again. This is your host, Coach Elix, and I am with my co-host and partner,
Stephen the Medium.
Stephen the Medium, and today's Friday, March 12th. And Stephen, what a glorious day. I am looking at outside and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I opened the slider a little bit just to get and smell fresh air, which is beautiful.
Yes, and it's almost like a sign that spring is in the air. I'm looking at the dogs outside in the pond, and it just feels beautiful. So, how are you, Stephen the Medium? What's going on?
Well, you brought it up. I'm just wondering, like, what would be your drag name if you were on RuPaul?
Oh my God, I don't know. I haven't even. I have to think about that. Because it's got to be sassy. It's got to have a Latin tone to it. So, I don't know. Let me think about that. What would be yours?
I never really thought about it either, but I think maybe, tree trimming. I think that would be a really cute drag name. Like it's got the little Christmas kind of, undertone and, yeah, tree trimming. Hey, I got my name. I'm good.
Well, hello. Good for you. But I'm sure people are not tuning in to hear our commentary about RuPaul's Drag Race. They're here because they probably want to be inspired. But listen, Stephen, I was sharing on my life that, I am feeling like I am 80 years old. I am so sore, like my whole body's sore. I had back surgery, spinal fusion in December 2019, right?
Yep.
And I was due to return to the gym. I do CrossFit, so I was due to return to the gym on March because, of course, after, you heal, you want to build muscle and get your strength again. So, of course, COVID happened. So I didn't get back in March, and I didn't really get back to the gym until June, I think it was. And I was there for a little while, and it was really good. But then COVID started getting sort of worse again. And, I have my mom with us, and she's 95. So, that's a concern for both Stephen and I. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to just take a break and not going to do the gym until we're sort of safer on the other side. So I just went back to my doctor. My spinal fusion is fully fused, but I told them that I sometimes when I'm on idle, when I'm moving, I feel great, but when I'm on idle, I don't feel that great. So he says, "Well, it's time for you to get back to the gym," and I feel better because I got my first vaccine, so I feel a sense of more safe now. My mom is now fully vaccinated. Stephen is got his first shot as well. So I went back this week. And let me tell you, people, my whole body aches. Like everything aches. I can barely, it takes me 5 minutes just to get out of this chair. So I am suffering at the moment. But I look really good. Just saying. Right, Stephen?
Well, yeah, but it reminds me of a Brady Bunch episode when Mike and Carol decide to change what they do. Like, Mike becomes Carol, Carol becomes Mike. And they both realize how difficult each other's jobs are, and at the end of the show they're walking up the stairs and Alice is clearing the table, and they're going so slow up the stairs. Alice, every time she comes out, says good night, and about the fifth time they're only halfway up the stairs and Alice is bing bang back, removing the dishes and coming back. And then finally Carol or Mike just looks at Alice and says, "What's so good about it?" So that was just, I guess that's where my mind is.
Yeah, and only Stephen, Stephen the Medium gives us a reference from the Brady Bunch of all things. So God be with us. But anyways, I feel
But you
great.
do look good. You do look really
I do
good.
look good. I feel
Yes.
good. I mean,
Yes.
I'm just sore. Like my whole body is sore, but I know the soreness is good for me. So there. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but if you have, you probably know exactly what I'm going through.
Well, if
right
you need
now.
another surgery, you're moving somewhere, but you're not staying here because I'm not going through that again. I can't. My heart is not strong enough. Between knee surgery, shoulder surgery, back surgery, yeah, I can't do it anymore.
No, notice Steven says, I can't go through it. Like he's the one going through the surgery. This is the level of drama that I live with every day. Like, please don't, I can't go through that. Well, I'm the one going through the surgery. You're just supporting me on by my side. But anyway, so bottom line is I feel much better. My back is doing fabulous. I mean, the difference between how I felt before and how I feel now, it's night and day. So I'm really blessed. I had a great doctor and I'm very happy about the results. But now I got to get back in shape, got to get back. I think I've been in shape because I never stopped, doing cardio like running, but there's a big difference between doing weight training and core training than just cardio, and I'm feeling the difference right now. So that's it. And today, Stephen, we are gonna talk about the power, right, of defining moments, and how defining moments, some can be good, some may not be as good, can be pivotal in who we are, what we do, how we respond to life, and whether we step into living our best life or whether we are sort of like holding back, whether we have a lid on what's possible. And it all starts with that defining moment. So, today we're going to talk about how to turn what may be a roadblock for you into a building block, how to better understand, how to get a sense of awareness as to what are those defining moments for you and what do they mean for you and how they may or may not get in the way for you. And how they lead us. One of the things that I often, this is a conversation I have all the time with my clients, and you and I have had this conversation many a times, how these defining moments can lead us to narratives, and about ourselves. And sometimes those narratives are not narratives that are supportive of who we are or that are even aligned with what we want, what we envision, what we aspire in life. So how we can turn that around and how we can, reinvent perhaps or recreate a new narrative. And, and again, like I said, often those narratives hold us back from living our very best life. So what do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, I think it's a really great conversation in subject matter to discuss because I think the majority of people, at least the majority of people, have had one of these moments, different from everybody else. But it's a nice feeling to know that we're not alone, in this world, that every one of us, albeit maybe different, the way you may have a defining moment, but we all have them, and we're all sort of either sidetracked or just sort of pushed towards a different direction where your life's going or your path's going. So I think it's a really interesting conversation.
And some of us, I said this before, I can't remember whether I said it in my life or somewhere, but some of us don't even know that those defining moments were defining moments or are defining moments for us. We may have a recollection that something happened, but some of us we don't even have sense of awareness that what happened, that thing that happened when you were 6 years old or 7 years old. Because by the way, the most impactful moments in our life that define, who we are today happen early on. in our lives. And we, again, we have defining moments that happen throughout our whole life, up until now. But when you think back to, and I often, again, I have this conversation with clients who come to me because they're stuck, clients who just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And this is the conversation that I guide them through. So let's talk about what are those, what are the moments that you remember. And again, coaching is not necessarily about, talking about the past, because coaching focuses in what's here and now and how to build, a pathway for the future. But this conversation is important because this sort of gives you, a platform to better understand, that thing, that's what gets in my way. So I often ask my clients, listen, think of what are those things, what are those moments that you recall from early on. And oftentimes the ones that come up first are the ones that are the most defining, the most impactful in their lives. And often, Stephen, they don't even know. Like, they're like, oh yeah, I remember when I was, in first grade, and my teacher yelled at me and told me to be quiet. And from that moment on, I decided that I don't have a voice, that I need to be quiet. And that is what has led them to, to live a certain life. And again, when we come back from the break, we'll navigate, we'll dive in further. But does that make sense, Stephen?
Yeah, of course it does. Absolutely. And just varying degrees of these defining moments. They don't have to be like these events, like 911 or 9/11, or they can be, as you just mentioned, something that sounds so random but can be so significant to an individual, like the example of, be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it's very profound in how these defining moments just, it's almost like a seed, and the way you cultivate it is really going to give you the result.
Yeah, yeah, and I have, that I have, again, this is such a pivotal conversation in coaching that I have so many examples. But let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll dive in deeper into the conversation of how do we harvesting defining moments in our lives. And if you have something that or these conversations has sort of reminded you of something that may have happened, that now you realize, oh, wow, I've been carrying that my whole life, you want to call us 508-222-1320 and join us in the conversation. So we'll be right back. And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and I am with my co-host, my partner. Who are you?
Stephen, the medium. But partner what? For country line dancing?
My partner, my husband, my partner in life. That's what I meant. Oh my
All
God.
right. Just checking.
See, as we're talking about defining moments.
This was one.
We are creating defining moments. We are talking today, if you're listening to us, we're talking about, defining moments and how they are pivotal moments in our lives. So let me just begin by sort of clarifying. So what is a defining moment, right? A defining moment is a point in your life when you are urged to make a pivotal decision about yourself, about who you are, and when you experience something that is fundamentally changes you. And oftentimes that experience, we do have, there are pivotal moments that are positive. There are pivotal moments that are somewhat negative, that they can derail us. And this conversation is really focused on that because oftentimes when we experience that and when we are, when we fundamentally experience that thing, right? That moment, it often comes with a negative. Something's wrong with me. There's something wrong here. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm missing this. I don't have the skill. I don't have talent. Whatever that is. So not only do these moments define us, but they have a transformative effect on our perceptions, on our behaviors. And that's why this conversation, it's really that impactful. Moments that are truly defining will force us to ask ourselves why. Those moments really are designed to challenge, your belief, your norms, and force you to behave differently. But most of the time, these moments happen in, perhaps you don't even know that they're happening because a lot of these moments happened years ago, oftentimes when we were younger. And we may remember, we may have a recollection of what that was, but we don't necessarily understand, how or the impact that had on who you are today. And I'll give you, I talked about, examples, and these are real examples. These are examples that I have with my clients day in and day out. One of my clients, was told when he was in first grade, be quiet. And that was a pivotal moment for him because in that, as a first grader, how old are you, Stephen? As a first grader, 6, 7 years old, I imagine?
Yeah, I think around that age.
So imagine a 6-year-old being told, be quiet. He made up that he didn't have a voice. He made up. Now he didn't speak it that way because he's 6 years old, don't have the ability to speak in that manner, but in his own 6-year-old brain, he decided that he was going to be quiet, that he didn't have anything to say, that he didn't have anything to contribute. And that defining moment actually shaped everything that he did or didn't for the rest of his life. And had an impactful way in his results as a business person. I have another client that also was confronted. He was struggling. This is an executive who was struggling with building meaningful relationships at work. People could not relate to this person. They had a very hard time, even liking this person. And what he recognized, he had no idea how his behavior occurred to others. And what he recognized in this conversation, that what was getting in the way was a pivotal moment, a defining moment, where as a young kid, he was bullied. And the bullying led to, I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to bully you before you bully me. Now, that was not a decision that was at a conscious level. That's just who he became. That's who he thought he was. And again, there's defining moments can be good, they can be bad. And, while I'm talking about the negative impact that they have, there's also a lot of positive that can come from these moments, because sometimes these conversations lead to, well, I'm going to prove that I'm the best that I can be. And a lot of these individuals, become very high performing leaders, very successful entrepreneurs, very successful, corporate leaders. But what happens is that no matter what they've accomplished, is always on top of that old conversation that started long, long, long ago. And I know, Stephen, you and I had a conversation several weeks ago, actually several months ago. It was like an aha moment, for you. And that's when you discover, a defining moment. So why don't you share with the listeners what that experience was like for you, and what it did provide, recognizing that defining moment?
Well, when I was 8 years old, my dad took his life, committed suicide, and it was me and my mother and my brother, and my father committed suicide when I was 8. And clearly that was a defining moment. But as you mentioned, Elix, I had no idea what was happening or the decisions I was, first of all, at 8 years old, that I was making, because a lot of decisions obviously were made for me. But I remember my mom and my dad owned a tenement house in Providence, like a 3-story house. And I remember the woman on 3rd floor grabbed me, and she took me out of our yard and went to the neighbor's yard, and we were just standing there. And I remember hearing the ambulance coming, and of course didn't know what was going on, because my dad was in the basement and he hung himself. And from that moment, that was my last recollection of that experience. I don't remember, and never had remembered, the wake, the funeral. Now, my mom filled me in and told me that me and my brother had the option to go to the wake, and we did get there, but then it was just too much for us. So the nuns took us back home and stayed with us until the wake was completed. And then after, the burial was done and the ceremony was done, we went to, and I think it was 3 months, went to live with my mom's sister. And I don't remember any of that. I do remember the next sort of memory I remember is being back in our house and just being coddled by my mom. I was the baby, and my mother, I think because I was the youngest, just really, went above and beyond, and did everything for me to make sure I was okay, because I was the youngest. And not realizing, and this, of course, this is all in hindsight, after many, many therapists, and trying to figure out, what was going on with me as I kept getting older, and I just didn't realize that this was, I was so affected by that pivotal moment of my father committing suicide. And on a side note, even decades ago, suicide has always been something that you sort of hide. And I do remember that we were sort of instructed to tell people, and sort of, my mom shared this with people, that my dad died of a heart attack. So like, I was even stepping out of the gate in sort of not the truth. And I know my mom did what she needed to do, because she's the best mom anybody could ever have. But as I kept getting older, I didn't really, I didn't do a lot of socializing. I never went anywhere. This is especially when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I never went anywhere with my mom. There's, and Elix, there's a lot of vacation pictures when we were younger, and my brother is with my aunts and in different places, and you never see me, because if my mother wasn't there, I wasn't there. And it sort of restricted the socializing, and And clearly, that's a key thing as people, kids are growing up and understanding, the interaction with other kids and other people. And, then it sort of got me to, even at 18, 19, when I was still living at home, like if my car needed an oil change, I didn't even go for the oil change. My mother did it. My mother brought it. In I always certainly had that sense of the underlying tone was always I wasn't good enough. Because as at 8 years old, 9, 10, as I started understanding a little bit more and more that my father was no longer here with us and that he intentionally killed himself, it of course just came back right to me that, well, clearly it had to be me. Because I also knew that I was different. I don't know if I could actually label I was gay, but I knew I was different and just thought that it had to be me, because what father would actually just leave his two boys or his kids? And I definitely it was like I was swimming in I'm not good enough pool. And no matter which way I turned or which way I swam, I never got out of that pool. And that just set up the story in my life, in my path. And I think, Felix, we probably have to take a break, and I can just continue after this.
Yeah. We're gonna take a break. We got to come back to this. In what I want to remind people as you're listening to Stephen is Stephen was 6 years old at the time, right?
8.
8 years old at the time. So imagine an 8-year-old in his own 8-year-old frame mind, right? Saying to himself, I must have been the reason why my father committed suicide. I mean, that's pretty significant, and that sets the tone for being pivotal in who Stephen becomes and, who you are. And so I think we got to come back. We got to talk about what happened the moment you discovered that and how you've been able to alter and reframe that so that you now have power related to that defining moment. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue with Stephen's story. If you want to join the conversation, 508-222-1320. Well, hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your coach. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and I'm with my co-host and husband, Stephen DeMedium. And Stephen is actually we're talking about defining moments and how those defining moments can, they're pivotal in defining who we are and how life shows up for us. And Stephen, I'm listening to your story, and one of the things that, I sort of want to just throw out there, for you to answer is, being 8 years old, right, and going through that experience, I remember one of the things you said to me was that set the tone for how you responded to adversity. And often it really helped you become who you are. But often, when you were confronted, it was the 8-year-old who was responding to that adversity, not the adult, Stephen. So, I share with us, the rest of your story, Stephen.
So as the years progressed, I do remember I didn't want to grow up. I do remember, and I think I just mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on this show, that I think at like 19 years old, I was still in the neighborhood roller skating. And I think part of that was just the way I was treated by my mom, that I didn't have to do anything. And another part was just really, being afraid. But this is all looking in hindsight, but what that defining moment did for me, it caused anxiety that I've had my entire life, which I still do, which is way better handled now. But it was harsh many, many years. And Elix, being together 28 years, you've seen it firsthand, of dealing with this anxiety and dealing with, just going out to a restaurant and in the middle of dinner, I just feel the anxiety just coming over me and feeling completely out of control, and, like my mind not being able to focus, and I'm just sweating, and it's just all part of that defining moment. There were other things that people don't think about. I had issues going to using a public bathroom. And of course, again, I found all this out after going through a lot of therapy, but you may think, well, I mean, how is going to a public bathroom connected to your loss of your father? Well, it is. It's just, it's the effect of what happened there, and really, again, how it changed me from that traumatic experience in the constant need to prove I am good enough. And, which also meant I had, and still do, have issues following rules. And I know, the jobs that I've had for so many years, my own business, working in juvenile court as a consultant to the state, there's no bosses. Because as you know too, Elix, I mean, I have been fired from a lot of jobs because just opening my mouth or not wanting to follow rules, or it's all based on that. And I know it's I'm not saying that it's an excuse, because at some point you have to look back and really acknowledge and take responsibility. But that's how I was. And, I was thinking, Elix, about last night when we were talking about the subject of the show, and just thinking, would I be an attorney today if it wasn't because of my father's suicide? Because the lawyering thing was really prompted and initiated again by, I'm good enough and I can do this, and I can prove to people that I'm good enough and I'm smart enough. And I think that I'm not really sure, and I'll never know, if I would be sitting here today as an attorney if that didn't happen. And I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but...
No, but Stephen, it makes perfect sense, because when when we have defining moments, and in your case, I'm not good enough, what we one of the resources I use in all of my coaching is this book, The Three Laws of Performance, by Steve Saffron and Dave Logan. They're mentors to me, and they talk about defining moments, and they talk about life sentences, right? And life sentence is when you decide, you take yourself, pun intended, you're an attorney, you take yourself to a trial, you are the jury, you are the judge, you are everything, and you've decided already that your life sentence is I'm not good enough. But what happens is you then, that life sentence becomes a driver. So you become somebody who is out to prove that I am indeed good enough. And that drive is what results in people like yourself being so highly accomplished. Because being an attorney is one of your many, many accomplishments. I mean, you are a super smart guy. You've accomplished just about anything you want. You get it done because you've been always out to prove that you are good enough. The problem with the life sentences is that, and you and I had this conversation, is that it's like the hamster in that little wheel. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you get, it's always on top of, but I'm still not good enough. Until you discover the source of where that story got started, until you discover the source of where, what was that pivotal moment in time. And I do remember you being in front of me and having that discovery, that aha moment where you were like blown away by, wow, yes, I am highly accomplished as an attorney, and on the other hand, I can't work for anyone because I don't like to follow rules. But when you're being that, it's not Stephen the adult, it's Stephen that 8-year-old.
Well, you're right though, Felix. It doesn't end. It doesn't matter. Then I graduate from law school, then I take the bar, I pass the first time, and it sort of satisfies it a little bit, but then it's like you're back to the same plateau of not good enough. But I will tell you that I am very thankful that I took, because doing readings and just speaking to people all these years, that there's people that have a similar experience, and I don't mean by the suicide, but a pivotal moment or a defining moment, and that actually go the opposite way, that never go anywhere or never feel like they can because they're not good enough. And I always have kept with me that at least I'm fortunate that it definitely inspired me to keep going and keep going and keep going, even though it, as you mentioned, it was like a spinning wheel. It just wasn't getting me to where I wanted to go. And when you talk about the 8-year-old boy, that was just, as you mentioned, Elix, that was that aha moment that, and I wrote an article about this, that I finally realized that I've had two Stevens, two little boys. I had up until the 8-year-old boy who was just loving and knew he was loved and knew he was good enough and didn't have to prove anything, and just had a mom and a dad and just felt so good and had a good life. And then there was the post 8-year-old that stepped inside. That was the complete opposite, that didn't feel any love, felt like everything was his fault, felt like I'm angry, and trying to live with these two boys my entire life that would battle each other every day, every second, was really the explanation of what my life was all about the anxiety and feeling out of control and snapping and wanting to run and just like sort of opening my mouth, whatever I wanted to say with jobs, and being fired. And it was in that the second pivotal moment when, and it was a spirit moment, when my dad came to me, and I remember I was in the basement and just collapsed. I was working out, and when I finished, I collapsed because I realized that even though on some level I knew, like on paper, I knew what was going on. I had been through therapy. I had realized it wasn't my fault what my father did, but I didn't believe it. And I realized at that moment that the surface that I was really just reading or looking at wasn't helping my soul. It wasn't changing things. And I still had that feeling of needing to be better and proving to people I was good. And once that moment happened and I connected with my dad, it completely changed me, because I understood. And I'm not going to say that I don't fall back sometimes. I think I will always have this with me, but I deal with it differently every day, and I'm in such a better place. And to be honest, the whole mediumship thing was sort of the pivotal moment. That was the opposite of the pivotal moment at 8 years old. That moment was sort of stamping, sort of giving me that pivotal moment of a stamp on my forehead saying, this will prove you are good enough. And it was just crazy. Crazy.
So we are going to take a break. When we come back, I actually want to read a passage from the book, The Three Laws of Performance, that it's very insightful, and it just sort of speaks directly to what you just said. So we will be right back. Again, if you want to join the conversation, 508-222-1320. And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. We are talking today about harnessing the power of defining moments. I'm your host, Coach Helix, and with me is my co-host and husband, Stephen the Medium. And Stephen is sharing his story about one of the most significant moments in his life. So, Stephen, why don't you just tell us the rest of your story?
So that really was the story. It's for other people that may have an experience that they've gone through a pivotal moment or a defining moment and want to know how to get through it. I will just say that it takes it, for me anyway, it took a long time because I didn't want to address it. I didn't want to go back to it to the degree I needed to. And one of the biggest things that has helped me is forgiving myself for everything I felt and everything, that I thought, and the perspective I had on myself. And that was another defining moment of the forgiveness piece, which just opened up the ability to then change my thoughts and change the filter I had been looking through, which really has changed my life for the better.
That's so incredible, Stephen. I'm so proud of you. As I'm listening to Stephen's story, I was drawn to this passage from the book, The Three Laws of Performance by Steve Saffron and Dave Logan, two people who I consider mentors because a lot of my training was based on their work. And it's a passage on a chapter about defining moments. And it reads as follows. It says, "Who are you really?" Question mark. And it says, Colin Wilson, the prolific and influential British writer, was born to working class parents from a relatively poor community in Britain. Although his ambition was to become the next Albert Einstein, he was forced to quit school at the age of 16. Working as a lab assistant, he fell into despair and decided to end his own life by drinking hydrocyanic acid. In the moment before what was to be his final act, he came to a realization. There were actually two Colin Wilsons. It was like two people living in the same body. One was a boy idiot filled with self-pity. The other was his real self. The boy idiot realized he was about to kill them both. From that moment on, Colin Wilson occurred to himself in a new way. He saw himself as the real Colin Wilson, instead of the unsuccessful lab technician. He later wrote that, "From this point, I glimpsed the marvelous, immense richness of reality extended to distant horizons. When how a person occurs to himself alter everything else shifts as well." Let me repeat that. When how a person occurs to himself alters, everything else shifts as well. And perhaps there's no better, more valuable lesson than this. That however you get to choose, and for many of us, like Stephen said, there were the two boys, and for many of us, we all experience that. Are we that person who's dealing with that loss of power, or are we the person that we know, or we believe we are? What do you hear, Stephen, in this little passage here?
Well, it's so similar to what I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly what I wrote. I've never heard what you just read in that person who wrote it, but check out my Instagram account because I did have it posted, and another author had actually posted it on her page too. But it was about being two different people.
Yeah. So again, this is it's such an insightful conversation, and I want you, we all have these defining moments, and I want you guys, your homework is to ask yourself, what happened? What happened to me? How far do you go, right? Try to go as far as you can, because those early defining moments, those are the ones that carry the most weight into our lives. So trying to define, to discover what that was for you, and then ask yourself, when that happened, what decision did I make about myself? What was the life sentence that I gave myself in that moment? And then at that point, then ask yourself, who am I really? Am I that person? Am I that life sentence? Or am I someone else? And think about what it is that you aspire most. Think about what it is that you want to leave behind. Think about what it is that what's your purpose? What's your vision? What are you here for? And let that guide you into asking yourself, who am I? Am I the life sentence? Or am I my vision? Am I my purpose? Am I my, my aspirations? What do you think, Stephen?
I mean, I think it's a great assessment or an internal evaluation. And that's what's necessary.
Yeah, it's necessary for all of us. And,
Yeah.
this conversation, honest to God, we start and then before I look and then we're almost done. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like, we could have another hour into this conversation because I love to also share, what one of those defining moments was for me, and the impact that it had on my life. So maybe we'll do a continue next week.
Yeah,
How
I think
about
that would
that,
be great.
Steven?
That would be great.
Let's do a continue and we'll talk about, more defining moments. But I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear, what value did you get from listening to this conversation? Did you have that aha moment for yourself? Are you now more clear as to that one thing that happened? And again, there are many things, and defining moments, they don't all need to be negative, but the negative ones are the ones that often, lead us to those pivotal moments in our lives, pivotal decisions in our lives. So ask yourself, because the moment you ask, it provides clarity. It gives you a way to now getting to choose. Because when you know that something is there, then you choose. When you don't know, you can't choose powerfully because you just don't know. You're in default mode, right? Life, I often say it's life, you know, life is just happening to you, or are you actively engaged in making life happen? And that's the question. And if you want to get actively engaged in designing your life, in designing your future, you have to understand and you have to be very clear as to what were those pivotal moments, so that you can then, it gives you the opening, it gives you the space to create, to reinvent a whole new narrative, one that may be a lot more empowering. So hope was this valuable for you, Stephen?
It was so valuable. I was just thinking, Alex, if this was several years ago, there's no way I would have shared this story, because I would have been too obsessed with, am I too vulnerable, or it makes me look weak? And just the fact of being able to share it and being very proud, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, and believe me, I know. We've been together 28 years, and I watch you grow, I watch you expand, I watch you transform. And again, that doesn't mean, you said earlier that, sometimes we get tripped, right? That's part of being a human being. We don't need to become perfect at anything. Perfection is not the goal. You can be human. You can allow your humanness to be there. That's just part of who we are. The difference is understanding and catching when we take that left turn, and then correcting in real time, not
Right.
spending days or hours.
I agree.
So, Stephen, before we close, how can people, first of all, what's going on with you? And second of all, how can people connect you?
Well,
Connect
there's always
with you, not connect you, connect with you.
connect. Am I an outlet or a
I don't
plug?
know. Stephen.
So there's a lot going on with me, a lot of great things coming up that I'm very excited about, and people can find me via Stephen the Medium in all social media. Hopefully, crossing fingers. I spoke to Mark texting today, and he is feeling much, much better, and that's the reason why I haven't done the show through the Static on Wednesdays for a couple of weeks, because Mark produces, and if Mark is not there, the show can't move forward. So, crossing fingers, he's feeling good. Thank God. Mark's good. So, we should be here Wednesday.
And I'm lucky enough because our general manager, Jim, he likes me better. So he's always there Fridays to do my show. Just saying. But this
Yeah,
is what
after I just like spilled my heart out, and now you're giving me that Jim hates me. Yeah, I took steps backwards, Jim.
No, Jim loves all of us, and he's very kind to be there Fridays to do my show. So I'm very thankful. But Mark, come on, get better so you can get back in business here. And you can find me at Coach Elix, on Instagram, on Facebook. My webpage is in transition because it's being redesigned, and I want to just a shout out to Lindsay Darlin, who's our brand manager, because without her, I'd be in a lot of trouble, and I know she does a lot of work to support Steven as well.
Oh,
so
she
shout
certainly
out to
does.
my Lindsay. So listen, everyone, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the weekend and a week, and we'll see you next week. And in the interim, listen, ask yourself, do you have a grip on life, or does life have a grip on you? This is your choice. Get a grip. See you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.